My name is Jaroslavsky. I am from Germany and I studied in Germany for the first time goldsmith and jewellery design. I finished as a goldsmith at the Zeichenakademie Hanau in Germany, and then I moved over to Glasgow and was doing my Bachelor of Honours at the Glasgow School of Art. My inspiration is mainly from my surrounding, so I'm mostly inspired by where I live or what I see on a daily basis, and at the minute most of my work is dealing with textures I've lifted from Glasgow. Because my inspiration is about my surroundings, obviously my inspiration is from people I meet, places I am, things we're changing on just normal things like the sun on sunstone, for example, textures you can see and colors and everything just around you. Because I'm a traditional trained goldsmith, I use mainly traditional practices. At the moment, more focused on lost wax castings due to the fact that I lift textures from a surrounding, and that is a good practice to do that in lost wax casting. I like to mix up materials. I do like silver and gold and stones and everything, but I also like to have a little bit of a contemporary twist on it to highlight that material has more value to it than just the inherent value of material. I really do like stones. It's a nice way of adding colour to your work, and because of Glasgow, I do like sandstone. So that was a nice way of comparing material with each other. You have got the facet nice stones like peridots, for example, I use right now in my work. But you also have the sandstone, which is a less precious stone, but in the sense of the sentimental value of the material, it might be more precious because it connects you more to your place or to an experience or to people rather than a nice facet stone. I think I always liked to make jewellery. That was one of the first things I expressed my creativity, I guess. When I was younger, I was just picking up things like spoons and made bracelets out of that when I was like 13 or something like that, and I was drawing a lot, and for me it was quite sure that I wanted to go into a creative profession when I was older. Didn't quite know where to go, so I think that I became a goldsmith was part of a happy accident, if that makes sense. I went to my old school and applied there because I had good drawing classes and sculpture classes, and you just got an education as a goldsmith, and since my first days in a workshop I just loved it.
My name's Andrew. I grew up in the east coast of Scotland in Fife and moved to Glasgow to study university when I was 18. So I actually studied architecture at the Glasgow School of Art for 3 years and loved that, but realised that it kind of wasn't necessarily what I wanted to do in the long run. I had always been interested in kind of jewellery and silversmithing and had done it a little bit in secondary school, but more kind of jewellery. I was lucky enough to go for a position into second year in the silversmithing and jewellery department, which was great. I was kind of obviously looking at jewellery to begin with, but I kind of quickly found that my scale was more towards silversmithing and that I enjoyed making slightly kind of larger scale pieces. And so as soon as I found that, I kind of fell in love with it. My work is inspired, surprisingly, by architecture. I'm inspired by architecture more loosely, but also just construction processes. So I love buildings when they're actually being built. So rather than just the finished buildings themselves, I think they're much more interesting when you actually see the scaffolding, the formers. And we've been really lucky actually, there's been a lot of change recently around the campus with the new building being built, and then obviously the work onto the Macintosh building across the road. So every day was my fourth year, I was just surrounded by inspiration, which was great. I often find that the buildings, whilst they're being built, look much more interesting than some of the finished pieces. In my work, I kind of, without thinking, started to develop two kind of ideas. I had my more kind of functional silver pieces, so I produced a series of ladles, some bowls, water jug, etc. But then I also had these slightly more kind of experimental pieces that I was making out of steel, and I was really interested in steel because it's such a kind of important component in architecture itself and in construction. I thought it lended itself quite nicely to my work. And it quickly kind of realised that they looked great as a kind of collective, but also as individual ideas sat well on their own. So I have my more kind of arty, experimental sculpture pieces. So in my wire work, I started off with this basically kind of steel mesh to create the physical form, but then also just played around with actually introducing precious metals. So I've used gold leaf and platinum leaf in the work as well to actually apply onto the metal, and that really changed the texture and the feel, and it kind of made it feel as though it was this kind of changing piece, kind of similar to the inspiration I have. I've applied it quite liberally, so there's often little extra pieces attached onto it, so when the wind catches it or any air catches it, you get this kind of sense of movement with them, which is really, really interesting, and again was one of those kind of happy mistakes. So it's one of those questions I always ask myself: why am I, why do I have this kind of creative energy, and why do I have this kind of need to make and to do kind of creative things? And it's something that I still don't think I found the answer to. I think that, when I was growing up, I was always interested in art and in making and playing with Lego and, constructing, and that kind of went through. And even when I was studying architecture, that was the part that I loved doing. I loved making the models. And I think, when you like making things, whether it's silver or cooking, it's one of those things that it kind of goes through every aspect of your life. And I'm still looking for the answer to why I do what I do and why I'm inspired by what I'm inspired by, but it's something that, it just comes naturally, and I'm still looking for that answer.
I'm Ailsa Morant, a Scottish-born artist based in Glasgow. I graduated with a first-class BA Honours degree in Silversmithing and Jewellery from Glasgow School of Art. And my final year collection was awarded the Departmental Peter Wiley Davidson Prize. Then at graduation, I received the Art School's Chairman's Medal for Design. Since then, I've been very fortunate that my work has been widely exhibited, including Gallery Marseille in the Netherlands and the Royal Scottish Academy in Edinburgh by Visual Arts Scotland. Jewellery is a very potent medium to work with, especially when you use it, like I do, to explore the concepts of value, materiality, materialism and happiness, as well as how the relationship of these concepts works. How we wear and use jewellery today has become very overly complicated, and the self-expressive and interpersonal communication role, which is its primary function, has become obscured for many. A series in my work explores how we sense each other subconsciously in our everyday lives through our social rituals and how we use objects. In this series, I considered handshakes and made impressions of the space between the palms of two people whilst they were shaking hands. I did this for many people in several settings, and then I cast the forms in a variety of materials. I like making the ordinary everyday things, transient things, visible. Little moments like a pause or an emotion or a wee nod in the street. It's the little insignificant things that are actually valuable, and the moments that you only notice briefly and you're mindful of, but they just pass. Often the objects we encounter in these moments have a cheap, disposable materiality, which I like because once you try to record a moment, rather than just experiencing and enjoying it and letting it go, you often turn it into something else instead of just enjoying it for what it was. So I use a lot of transient objects in my work, things like balloons, paper objects, toys and candles. I think that the low cost or transient nature of the objects that I use actually facilitates social connections between us. Their nature increases their power as social objects and help them make us connect in our everyday lives in a way that precious, valuable things don't actually do. I like making work that celebrates the ordinary, everyday moments and the objects we use, especially those that we actually hold in our hand, and they help us to show that we care or to share things. And my work's about what I can do to enable others to be considerate of these moments and to be mindful about them and how they are very valuable within our lives and how they help us.
My name is Adrian Peshti and I was born and raised in Hungary, but I completed my higher education in Scotland at the Glasgow School of Art, and ever since I have been working to fulfill my artistic vision and practice in Glasgow. I most often create narrative works which are inspired by people and people's behaviour or relation between them. Therefore, my biggest influence is my surroundings. At my recent project, I'm particularly interested in social alienation expressed through stereotypes and prejudice, and I'm enthused by creating possibilities how to overcome this judgment. Therefore, I try to create a platform for people from all walks of life and investigate about their relationship with fellow humans and the environment. Hence, I'm interested in how jewellery can function as an object to prompt social interaction and lead to integration. And my main focus is really to reconnect people by my pieces that carry their own visual language to stimulate interaction in an engaging and often playful manner. I start my project with thorough research with the relevant academic readings about the topic, and very importantly, I speak to people about their experiences as that is the real life first-hand experience I can relate as a person and as a maker. As you can see, most of my interest coming from intangible research, therefore it's very difficult to do a traditional sketchbook work for me, and that's why I rather prefer to develop and design through making and materials. Alongside my conceptual investigation, I put a lot of care into the visual development and to choose the appropriate materials to make sure it's all relevant for my subject matter. For me, colour, texture, pattern, materials all having a certain function or symbolic meaning to feel. The texture and the bright colours are functional aspects in my work that I use as trigger elements to create curiosity in people and make them step closer to the viewer and perhaps engage in a conversation. The bright pieces are made from 3D printed and hand-dyed nylon to keep them light and fun. It's symbolising the celebration of different individuals and their appreciation in recent society. The silver metal structure and the vitreous enamel panels with the irregular and monochrome linear patterns are a symbol of a homogeneous society that is divided by sometimes outdated and rigid social norms. The presence of these elements and symbols are very important as the existence together expressing the motivation behind my pieces, but also fulfilling the function of creating social connection that gives a lighter approach to my subject matter. For me, to being a jewellery artist, if I have to define myself, is basically as a tool for me to express my thoughts, which I probably could not do in a verbal way. So for me, as a visual language, it's a very important way of self-expression and expression of my thoughts.
My name is Caitlin Heckney and I'm a Scottish artist, designer, maker. I graduated from the Glasgow School of Art in 2018 and I make objects, talismanic objects, and they're also wearable. And another part of my practice is facilitating and sharing craft skills, so that's through workshops and through meeting and working with other people. Okay, so I'm inspired by a summation of observations and thoughts about our ancient culture. For me, I kind of see them as rhythms that transcend from the past to the present, and the way that I kind of harness all that is I collect elements of our heritage, so it can be through objects, writing, observing rituals, traditions, ways of life. Yeah, I see my practice as a science experiment. There's almost lots of variables and there's one constant for me, and that's the colour blue. I'm absolutely fascinated by it. It's such a rich history, and it carries a symbolism of value which is of a lot of interest to me. My inspirations are also reactionary, I think, to modern culture. They observe the rituals of the present day and almost compare them in a way that says that the rhythms are no longer driven by elemental things but by devices and technology. So my practice is relatively interdisciplinary. I do a lot of drawing, and I make elements which respond quite thoroughly to my mixed media drawings. And with these elements I collage and make assemblages that eventually become designs. One of the techniques that I engage with is chasing, which is the moving of metal through a repetitive hammering motion. I make my own tools to do this to help connect with the drawn marks in my two-dimensional drawings. And the process is also of great interest to me because it can date back as far as we can see to the 2nd century BC. And I also do a lot with stones, semi-precious stones, but rather than setting them, I'm drawn to crushing them. For me, again, this is obviously referring back to the colour blue and the way that pigment was once made in ancient history, but also it plays with the theme of value in terms of breaking down semi-precious materials. For me, the ancient processes in my work, I want to celebrate them, but I also want to subvert them. So I think that I do what I do because it chose me. I feel I've always been a maker. I've always been very intuitively working with my hands, playing with materials, collecting materials, and adapting them for certain purposes. And I love the discipline of metalworking, jewellery and silversmithing because it engages my interests in anthropology, the study of people, but also with materiality. And it's also such a great discipline to be able to engage with these ancient crafts and ancient ways of life that are still really relevant in our culture and society today.
I'm Rachel Hardy. I'm a Scottish maker and I'm based in Glasgow. I studied at the Glasgow School of Art, started in 2014 and graduated in 2018. Currently, I think it's my surroundings, being from Glasgow, walking about the city, and I kind of captured the tops of the buildings. So right now my theme is the chimneys, but I think it's more about the place I grew up in. So in my practice, I work a lot with non-precious and precious metals. I like the contrast between the high and the, I guess, cheaper costs of it. Because copper and brass have really nice colours, and when you heat them up, and I heat patinate a lot in my work, I don't know, when they get heat patinated, they change, and I think it's a nice contrast between using precious metals because they get such a, well, they are lovely, but they don't even need to get polished. But yeah, I like the kind of rural colours that come out with the water. I guess when I work with, because I don't have a second material, and it's not that I've not like tried a material, I just found that metal right now is what I want to use. The imperfections that you make, I try to highlight them rather than get rid of them because they're all part of the process, I guess. So yeah. I think I'm a tactile person. It's not that I don't make jewellery, I've just swayed into the objects more, and people pick them up, so they're quite interactive. But yeah, I think I just like making, and I think it's, I don't know, I'd rather do that than, I don't know, I'm not really good at words, so making something's a lot more easier with my hands. So I enjoy it, so I think that comes out more.
My name is Michelle Stewart and I studied at RMIT University in Melbourne, Australia. A Bachelor of Fine Arts in Jewellery and Silversmithing. And then I travelled here to Scotland to undertake the Artist in Residence here at the Glasgow School of Art. The work that I'm currently making is, I've been lucky enough to get some of the sandstone from the Macintosh building that was damaged in the fires. So I've been able to use the stone to create my pieces, which is a beautiful honour, and I feel very privileged to be able to have these pieces to be able to use. I'm working with the visuals that I'm picking up here, the visual cues from the city of Glasgow itself. So looking at grid lines and there's lots of building, and of course the Mac building is covered in scaffold. So that's a very big influence in the pieces that I'm making. So there's lots of enclosed pieces. The sandstone's quite soft, so it needs a little bit of protection and a little bit of a hug. So previously my work was a lot about where I live and where I have been. So it's been about the forest in Australia. It's a very different setting here in Glasgow, so it's gone from a very natural setting to a very man-made setting, and that affects my work by sort of the structures and the forms that I'm making. I do a lot of work with glass, and so not having the facility so much to work with glass here, I've been pushed to work with a different material. So it's brought up lots of different challenges, but also housing the sandstone, which is also quite a delicate material. It's some of the working mechanisms for working with glass have been quite similar, and there have also been some moulding and some carving that's similar to working with glass. I like to make jewellery partly because I like the personal nature of adornment and jewellery, and of course it's a very common idea for jewellers, is that they like that personal notion of the work being carried and held. And I think that's the tactile side of it is important in my work, and the way that I like to work with the forms. I like people to be able to hold it and feel a real connection to material as well, but then that can also help bring in a connection to place as well.